Welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate. Since we are at the very end of this episode, today we'll be speaking about a year, or 2020, and how the economic reform program has given a life breath to Egypt to be able to continue on with its plan, despite all the challenges that we have been facing during this year. Egypt's current foreign relations, in addition to the economic reforms and the unparalleled growth rate, led to improving confidence of the international investors and in Egypt's economy. Egypt has made remarkable economic progress translated into the measures included in the economic reform program and development process of the national economy, as well as the investment climate, making the country more appealing to foreign investors. Through developmental projects and upgrading the country's infrastructure as the roads, bridges, highways, and tunnels, and all this. Egypt's economic reform have been successful in achieving macroeconomic stabilization, recovery in growth and employment. This success reflected on the citizens' daily life. And that was because of the keenness of the leadership to emphasize how important it is to lessen the burden on the citizen through some of the projects that goes in line with the mega project. We'll be speaking about that in our episode with our distinguished guest, Engineer Hassan Shabaan, political and economic analyst. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on this report. And President Sisi inspects major road and development projects. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inspected on Friday the work progress at a number of major road and bridges networks, as well as utility development projects in East Cairo. The inspection tour covered a number of new main roads, axes and bridges in East Cairo, including Nasser City District, Ezbet al-Haggana District, and the Masr Gadida neighborhood. During the tour, the President was briefed by officials on the latest developments in road development projects, including the construction of a new road axis that links the neighborhood of Nasser City and the Cairo Ring Road, New Cairo, and Irhab City. His Excellency was also briefed on development efforts in the Ezbet al-Haggana district as part of the government's ongoing projects to develop slums and connect them with major road axes. This will be done through constructing main roads instead of narrow lanes, with the aim of putting an end to the overcrowdings. The work in Ezbet al-Haggana included upgrading all basic services and infrastructure within the area, painting the facades of buildings, establishing a modern terminal for public transport, and providing new shops for street vendors. It's worth mentioning that thousands of citizens who were residing in insecure and dangerous areas under the high-voltage electric lines in Ezbet al-Haggana were also transferred to the well-equipped city of Helena with the aim of raising their standards of living. The President also inspected the network of bridges and the new main axes that were implemented in the Nasser City district, which ended the congestion that the neighborhood had been suffering from for decades.
Welcome back, and let me again welcome our guest, Engineer Hassan Shabaan, economic expert. Thank you so much again for being with us. Let me start with the year 2020. Since the very beginning, and we've been seeing tough events taking place in the Middle East, in Africa, and that, of course, put the Egyptian foreign policy under the spot. Can we say that during this period, Egypt was able, through its foreign policy, to extend and pave the way for more economic development through attracting foreign investments through its policy of propagating and its moderate policy of finding solutions to the area. How do you view how did it go?
I think we were successful in utilizing the year 2020 in paving the way for investors to come after the pandemic, actually. Definitely the pandemic had an impact on all investors worldwide. It's not only in Egypt or in certain areas. I mean, all the investments were frozen in the year 2020, relatively speaking, because fortunately we had some investments in Egypt due to stability and due to the infrastructure that actually we managed to accomplish during the year 2020. But I consider the year 2020 is a year where we prepared the country for investments, heavy investments. I mean, the highways and the infrastructure that was made during this year is really very impressive, and still going. By the way, it's going strong. In my humble opinion, as an engineer, even what happened in the last few years, actually, especially the year 2020, which is a very difficult year for all the worldwide, I mean, was better than the last 30 years. And, comparing what took place in the last 30 years before, the year 2005.
The very recent
right?
years are so different.
I think we've accomplished a lot, and we're still going strong. We are rediscovering our country again. We have access to Egypt. I mean, Western deserts, the Eastern Desert, Red Sea area. I mean, not only the bridges in Nasser City or whatever, we have major projects outside the capital, actually.
Indeed.
And I think this will help the government to carry out the distribution or the program to redistribute population all over Egypt, actually, instead of concentrating population in the valley and the delta. We have a very ambitious program to spread our population over the whole 1 million kilometers.
This is really part of the importance of infrastructure and the leadership's emphasis to upgrade the infrastructure inside Egypt, but inside Egypt at large, because we're not speaking about highways just in Cairo or, as you said, in Nasser City, but rather highways linking all the roads to different cities from and into. The leadership, or President Sisi, was so keen to upgrade infrastructure, but also he was so keen to develop urban areas. Why was he, or why was the leadership keen to upgrade those two particular areas?
You see, urban areas have really suffered negligence for so long. I mean, nobody really considered any upgrading for the infrastructures in the urban areas. And I think it is fair enough to treat urban areas in a similar manner to the major cities. Let me put it this way. I don't think that there is a spot in Egypt that was not touched in the last 3 years. I mean, the government has touched everything. I mean, it's very impressive. Wherever you drive, you find a lot of activities, construction. I think Egyptians will be able to have access to areas where they wanted to cultivate, for instance, in the Western Desert, areas that they wanted to develop in the Eastern Desert, in the area of Upper Egypt, in the Kena Valley. Also, we're looking and considering the Cape Town Alexandria highway. We're looking outside our borders, and I think Egypt after this pandemic will look completely different and attractive to investors.
Yes, we're looking forward for the Alexandria Cape Town highway, and I guess these are just preparations for that to come. If I may ask you here, how does this, or what we are speaking about of upgrading the Egyptian infrastructure and the urban areas or the urban development, how do we relate this to our vision of sustainable development, or for the clear vision of 2030 for sustainable development?
Well, in order to achieve sustainable development, actually, you need to have the basic elements for a successful sustainable development. Meaning, you really cannot really have a program to develop a substitute village, for instance, in the middle of the desert. You cultivated the area, and you actually mobilized a lot of farmers to this new area without really having highways, having schools. Sustainable development does not really mean only infrastructure. It means securing education, securing health care. In addition to this, I think the government will consider cultivating areas to serve areas that under really development right now. Alamein, for instance, the city of Alamein. The city of Alamein is on the shore of the Mediterranean. In the back of Alamein, you have a depth of the Natrun Valley all the way to Siwa and all the new valley. I think this area will be developed. The 1.5 million Faddan is behind all of this. This is the depth of it. And the market for the products of this cultivated land will be Alamein. You have already a market, secured a market, and you have the infrastructure, accessibility, and everything is there for a successful, sustainable development. Hopefully, the government will be able to encourage young people to actually go to these new areas and discover for themselves the great chances that are there in these areas, instead of just complaining all the time that there is not enough jobs for the young people in urban, not in the urban places, but close to the major cities. You need to go out and discover for yourself what's going on in the Western Desert, for instance, or in the area of the road to Suez is very impressive. I think the new capital will also have a great chance for young people to work along the new capital to provide basic needs, food and agricultural products for the capital, instead of having long distances to travel between the old areas and the new areas. I think it will be very different from what we used to see in Egypt. It will be a completely different type of life.
You pinpointed here on Al Alamein and the new administrative capital, as well as the Suez Canal area. Let me here take it that it's not just those three. We're speaking about 20 new cities.
Oh, yes.
14 of them have been completed already, and the others are being
under construction.
Yes, indeed. But my question here would be, mega projects were a main theme for the leadership to brand Egypt as an ongoing developmental or an ongoing developing country that is going on track for its path towards being developed. How far do you think the new cities were able to brand Egypt as going on the right track in this path?
I think the new cities is just a beginning, actually. The government have done its work, actually. And the remaining amount of work will be left for private sector. And the government provided basic new cities, and the private sector will have to interfere to complete the work of the government, establish new industrial areas, either to produce new goods in Egypt and new technologies, or to have agricultural communities close to the new cities.
Here I have to speak about the state's keenness and conform to accelerate with the mega projects, with those projects, and to strengthen this area. How far do you see that the keenness of the leadership to go on, despite all the difficulties, despite all the challenges, really reflect on the way things went on?
It is, the first time to see an Egyptian president supervise the ongoing projects himself.
Going to Hazrat himself.
Right. Well, he's actually following every detail, and you cannot really ask for more than this. We're accelerating the whole thing. I mean, he's pushing everybody to work, and I think within few months, we will see something different. When you drive on a highway today, a week after that, you will see something different when you actually drive on the same highway. Egypt is changing, and we have a president who is pushing everybody to get the job done. And I think so far he's very successful.
Yes. Legislation, because part of development was putting institutions and the recent elections where we have seen a Senate besides the House of the Representatives taking place. How far do you think that this kind of diversity of the composition of the legislative authority
the two houses, yes.
Yes, would really help Egypt in accomplishing what it needs? And how is that reflecting on the situation?
Hopefully, the upper house will work as a workshop to relieve the parliament from coming up with laws. It will be like a workshop or a lab to come up with laws and just pass these laws to the parliament to approve or to have remarks on it. So actually you're relieving the parliament from this load, this heavy load of coming up with a law and approving it. It will be only the parliament will be in charge of approving laws just made by the upper house. So I think let's hope that this will be more efficient and it will improve the democratic life that we're living right now.
And how would that reflect on the economy, by
speed? Actually, time is money. And I think the more we deal with our problems and come up with legislations that can make life easier for investors, it will be definitely better. We will always accuse that we have a lot of red tape and the process of getting license and and permissions for investors.
Bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, yeah. Red tape is killing us. So I think having the two houses will accelerate a little bit the process, and it will improve the legislation life, actually.
Is the main aim, or are we speaking about two houses, upper and lower, in order to be able to come out with new ideas out of the box? And how do we need that really for our life? And I'm not speaking just on the political life, but I'm also speaking about social, economic, and...
This is a good question. I think a few years ago, we started examining laws that were like 100 years old and 150 years old. And I think it's about time to live on the ground and consider examining all the obsolete laws that actually holds the movement of development in Egypt. We need to review everything, and I think the upper house could do this. Actually, there was a committee at one time that were in charge of reviewing all the laws, and I think it stopped, and I think it should resume its work and examine all the laws that holds our growth. Actually, we need to be able to compete with ourselves. We need to score far better points than we did in the past. We have a very ambitious president, and I think in order to keep up with the momentum he wants, the upper house and the lower house will have to work together to come up with something impressive, actually.
I guess to keep the pace with the president,
it will be
needs
difficult.
The House of Representatives, the Senate, the governments, and everybody to run after him. Anyway, right. Returning back to our episode, and despite the challenges that we've been seeing in 2020 was tremendously hard.
Yes.
And challenges because of the pandemic, because of how people felt, because of the burdens, because of the economic burdens people have felt, and institutions and companies,
the type of work online.
Yes, everything, everybody.
Yes.
Everybody felt
Schools,
it his
everything,
way.
yeah.
But despite that, we have seen two reports by the IMF and the World Bank speaking about how the Egyptian economy was able to perform despite all the pandemic, the challenges, the containment measures, and all these. How did you read the IMF and the World Bank's reports?
I was surprised and impressed, actually, when I read the report. It was issued recently, and I felt that we were going into two parallel lines. The government was just kept on going, ignoring all the obstacles, and maintained the rapid speed of growth in economy. In spite of the fact we were suffering from the pandemic just like everybody else, we managed not to stop, and this is exactly what happened, and it's still going on. Our economical situation is still stable, as you see. The relation between the pound and the dollar is still intact. Basic goods are there, and basic supplies for the needs of the people. Everything is as it was before the pandemic. So this is a very remarkable, note that we have to consider and, have credit for the government. Hopefully, because the coming few weeks will be a little bit difficult because reports are not very promising in regard of the pandemic. But I think so far, if the government makes efforts to make the people aware of the hazards that could actually hurt us unless we comply with the requirements to face this pandemic, we have to.
You're speaking here about the awareness of the citizens, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. If I may here ask you, people's awareness. People awareness has to be dealt with seriously.
I think we have a problem in this regard, yes, especially in the countryside.
Right. Before we continue on with our discussion, let's have this second report and Egyptian economy remarkable resilience in 2020. Let's watch.